The rain came down in sheets, a cold, relentless assault that turned the Boston streets into rivers of asphalt and regret. I stood frozen on the front steps of my parents' brownstone, the weight of their words still ringing in my ears like a gunshot. "You're no daughter of ours, Eliza," my father had said, his voice flat, final, as if he were reading a verdict. My mother wouldn't even look at me, her eyes fixed on the hardwood floor, her hands twisting a dish towel into knots. My brother Ethan and sister Sophia sat smug on the velvet couch, their accusations, lies about stolen money and a sordid affair hanging in the air like smoke I couldn't clear. I was pregnant, penniless, and now, officially, erased from the Kane family. The door slammed shut behind me, the sound swallowed by the storm's roar. I had 1 hour to disappear. I clutched my duffel bag, the only thing they'd left me, its zipper broken, the strap fraying like my sanity. My sneakers sank into the wet pavement as I stumbled down Beacon Street, the wind clawing at my face, my hair plastered to my cheeks. I didn't cry. Not yet. I couldn't afford to. The weight in my stomach wasn't just nausea. It was the twins, my secret, the only truth they couldn't strip away. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stop moving. Boston's Back Bay, with its gas-lit street lamps and ivy-covered facades, felt like a stage set for someone else's life now. My life, the one I'd built with late-night study sessions and dreams of a biotech breakthrough, had just been torched. The storm wasn't just weather, it was a reckoning. Lightning cracked, illuminating the city in stark white, and for a moment I saw my reflection in a shop window, pale, wide-eyed, a stranger even to myself. I was 26, a grad student with a thesis that could have changed lives, but my family had chosen Ethan's charm and Sophia's crocodile tears over me. They'd believed I'd stolen from their retirement fund, that I'd thrown myself at Sophia's fiancé, that I'd betrayed every value they'd raised me with. Lies. All of it. But they didn't ask for proof. They didn't need it. They'd already rewritten the story of who I was. I ducked into an alley to escape the wind, my breath hitching as I leaned against a brick wall slick with rain. That's when I heard it. A low rumble, not thunder, but something mechanical. Alive. Headlights sliced through the dark, and a black SUV screeched to a stop at the alley's mouth. My heart slammed against my ribs. 2 figures climbed out, their silhouettes blurred by the downpour, but their steps were deliberate, heavy. "Eliza Kane!" one of them shouted, his voice cutting through the storm. I didn't wait to see who they were. I bolted, my bag bouncing against my hip, my shoes slipping on the wet cobblestones. The alley twisted, leading to a chain-link fence I hadn't seen in the dark. I scrambled over it, my jeans catching on the metal, tearing. A sharp pain shot through my palm as I landed, blood mixing with rainwater. They were still behind me, their boots pounding closer. I didn't know who they were, creditors, Sophia's hired muscle, or just bad luck. But I wasn't sticking around to find out. I darted into another alley, this one narrower, lined with overflowing dumpsters that reeked of rot and desperation. My lungs burned, but I kept running until I hit a dead end, a brick wall looming like a judge's gavel. The footsteps stopped. I pressed myself against the wall, my breath shallow, praying the shadows would hide me. A flashlight beam swept the alley, missing me by inches. "She's not here," one of them growled, and after what felt like an eternity, their steps faded back into the storm. I slid to the ground, my back against the cold brick, my hands trembling as I clutched my stomach. The twins, they were all I had now, 2 tiny heartbeats I hadn't even heard yet, but they were enough to keep me from breaking. I pulled my diary from the bag, its black leather cover damp but intact. It was my lifeline, a record of every betrayal. Ethan stealing my grandmother's sapphire necklace as her own. I slipped it open, the pages warped from the rain, and read an entry from 2 years ago. Ethan took credit for my CRISPR segment today. Professor emailed him praise. Dad framed it. The memory stung, but it also fueled me. They thought they could erase me, but I was still here, still fighting. The storm didn't let up, and neither could I. I needed shelter, a plan, anything to keep me and my baby safe. I remembered a motel off Tremont Street, a seedy place I'd passed during late-night walks home from the lab. It wasn't much, but it was better than this alley. I forced myself to my feet, ignoring the ache in my legs, the blood dripping from my palm. The city was a blur of neon signs and honking horns as I made my way to the Starlight Motel, its flickering sign promising vacancy and anonymity. The clerk barely looked up as I slid crumpled bills across the counter, my hands shaking from cold and adrenaline. "Room 12, he muttered, tossing me a key. The room smelled of mildew and stale cigarettes, the carpet stained, the curtains threadbare. I locked the door, double-checked the deadbolt, and sank onto the bed, the springs creaking under my weight. My bag hit the floor with a thud, spilling its contents. A toothbrush, a change of clothes, and the diary. I stared at the ceiling, water dripping from my hair onto the pillow, and let the silence settle. Then I felt it, a flutter deep in my core, not pain, but presence. My twins. I pressed my hand to my stomach, whispering, "You're the only truth they can't take." It wasn't just a promise to them, it was a vow to myself. I needed to know for sure. I grabbed my purse, ignoring the exhaustion pulling at my limbs, and walked 3 blocks to a 24-hour drugstore. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as I scanned the aisles, my wet shoes squeaking on the linoleum. I grabbed a pregnancy test, paid with the last of my cash, and hurried back to the motel. In the dim bathroom, under a flickering bulb, I watched 2 pink lines appear. Positive. I didn't cry or scream. I just stared at my reflection in the cracked mirror, my face pale but resolute. "We're not alone," I said aloud, my voice steady despite the chaos of the night. But the night wasn't done with me. As I sat on the bed, clutching the test, a loud crash echoed from the parking lot. My heart leapt into my throat. I crept to the window, peeling back the curtain just enough to see. A car's headlights illuminated the lot, and I saw it. My old Honda, the one I'd parked a block away, its windshield shattered, red spray paint scrawled across the hood. Traitor. I gasped, my hand flying to my mouth. Someone had followed me, not the men from the alley, but someone who knew where I'd be. Sophia? Ethan? Or someone they'd sent to make sure I stayed gone. I backed away from the window, my pulse racing. The motel's thin walls felt like tissue paper, no match for whoever was out there. I grabbed my phone, my fingers hovering over Camden's number. I hadn't told him about the pregnancy, the eviction, any of it. We'd been in that hazy, almost love phase, flirting over coffee and late-night texts, but I wasn't sure he'd come. Still, I typed, "I'm in trouble. Starlight Motel, room 12. I hit send before I could overthink it. The wait was agonizing, each creak of the building making me jump. I stuffed the diary back into my bag, ready to run again if I had to. Then a soft knock. 3 taps, deliberate, familiar. I opened the door a crack, and there he was, Camden Reed, soaked from the rain, his gray hoodie clinging to his shoulders, his eyes searching mine with a quiet intensity. "You okay?" he asked, stepping inside without waiting for an answer. I couldn't speak, not yet. He didn't push, just sat in the rickety chair by the window, his presence a tether to something solid. The pregnancy test sat on the table, its lines stark under the dim lamp. He glanced at it, then back at me, no judgment, just a nod. "Want to get out of here?" he said. I nodded, my throat tight. We left the motel, his old Ford truck rumbling through the storm, the wipers barely keeping up. He didn't ask questions, and I didn't offer answers. Not yet. We ended up at a diner on the edge of the city, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and waitresses who called you Han without looking up. The neon sign outside buzzed, casting a red glow across Camden's face as he ordered 2 black coffees. We sat in silence, the rain drumming against the windows, until I finally spoke. "I'm pregnant," I said, the words spilling out like a confession. He didn't flinch, just slid a napkin across the table, scribbling one word. Together, I stared at it, the letters blurring as my eyes stung. "You don't know what you're signing up for," I said, half laughing, half choking. He leaned forward, his voice low but firm. "I know what I'm not running from." He told me about his family then, old money from Connecticut, biotech patents and expectations that weighed more than love. He'd walked away from it all, just like I was trying to. "I saw Ethan take credit for your work at that pitch event," he said, his eyes steady. "I knew it was yours." My fingers tightened around the coffee mug, the warmth grounding me. I hadn't thought anyone noticed. Ethan had strutted across that stage, my slides behind him, my name nowhere to be found. Camden's words were a lifeline, proof I wasn't invisible. But the danger wasn't over. As we left the diner, the rain had slowed to a drizzle, but the air felt charged, heavy. We walked to the truck, and I noticed a figure lingering across the street, hood up, watching. My stomach dropped. "Camden?" I whispered, grabbing his arm. He followed my gaze, his jaw tightening. "Get in," he said, unlocking the doors. As we pulled out, the figure stepped into the streetlight's glow. "Ethan." His smirk was unmistakable, even from a distance. He raised a hand, not waving but pointing, like a warning. My heart pounded as Camden floored the gas, the truck lurching forward. We didn't speak until we reached his apartment, a small walk-up in South End with bare walls and a coffee maker that groaned like it was on its last legs. I collapsed onto the couch, my bag at my feet, the diary spilling out again. Camden locked the door, checked the windows, then sat across from me. "Who was that?" he asked. I swallowed hard. "My brother. He's not done with me." Camden's eyes darkened, but he didn't push. Instead, he handed me a blanket and said, "You're safe here. For now." I lay awake that night, the city's hum filtering through the walls, my mind racing. Ethan's presence wasn't just a taunt. It was a threat. He'd always been the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, even when he stole my work, my future. And Sophia, with her perfect smile and venomous lies, was probably behind the vandalism, the men in the alley. They wanted me gone, not just from the family, but from Boston, from the life I was trying to build, but I wasn't running. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke to sunlight slicing through the blinds, Camden's note on the counter. "Went for coffee. Don't leave without breakfast." I smiled, a small crack in the armor I'd built overnight. But as I reached for my phone, it buzzed with a new message, an unknown number. The text was simple, chilling. "You can't hide forever, Eliza. We know where you are." My breath caught, my eyes darting to the window. The street below was quiet, too quiet. I grabbed the diary, flipping to a new page, and wrote, "They want me erased, but I'm still here, and I'm not alone." The story wasn't over, it was just beginning. The morning light in Camden's South End apartment felt like a fragile truce, a fleeting moment of calm before the storm I knew was coming. I sat at his small kitchen table, my fingers tracing the edges of my diary, the black leather cover now scuffed from the chaos of last night, the text from the unknown number. "You can't hide forever, Eliza. We know where you are." Burned in my mind, each word a splinter under my skin. I didn't know if it was Ethan, Sophia, or someone they'd hired, but the threat was real. My twins, still just a flutter in my belly, were my anchor, my reason to keep moving. I wasn't just fighting for myself anymore. I was fighting for them, for the future I'd build from the wreckage of my family's betrayal. Camden walked in, balancing a tray of coffee and bagels, his face softening when he saw me. "You didn't sleep?" he said, not a question. I shook my head, sliding my phone across the table so he could see the message. His jaw tightened, his eyes scanning the screen. "We need to get you somewhere safer," he said, setting the tray down. "This place isn't secure." I wanted to argue, to say I could handle it, but the memory of Ethan's smirk under the streetlight, the red paint on my car, the men in the alley, it all pressed against me, heavy as the Boston humidity. He was right. I couldn't stay here, not with whoever was hunting me knowing my every move. But leaving meant facing the city again, a place that felt more like a maze of traps than the home I'd grown up in. I packed my duffel, tucking the diary and the pregnancy test inside, the latter now a talisman of my resolve. Camden drove us to a women's shelter on the edge of Cambridge, a nondescript brick building with barred windows and a security guard who looked like he'd seen too many stories like mine. I checked in under the name Claire Harper, the alias I'd used at the clinic. The woman at the desk, with kind eyes and a clipboard, didn't ask questions beyond the basics. "You're safe here," she said, handing me a key to a shared room. I nodded, but safety felt like a promise no one could keep. The shelter was a patchwork of survival, women whispering in corners, kids playing with worn-out toys, the air thick with the scent of instant coffee and desperation. My roommate, a woman named Marla with a faded Bruins cap and a story she didn't share, gave me a curt nod and pointed to the top bunk. I climbed up, my body aching from the night before, and opened my diary. I wrote, "They think they can scare me into disappearing. They don't know I'm already building something they can't touch." The words were my rebellion, my refusal to let Ethan and Sophia win. But rebellion didn't pay the bills, and I had none left. I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my life and my work. In the shelter's common room, I found a computer older than my undergrad years, its keys sticky from use. I logged into the library's database, my hands trembling as I searched for grant programs and startup frameworks. My thesis, the one Ethan had stolen and passed off as his own, was the key. It was a blueprint for affordable cancer diagnostics, a low-cost hormone detection system that could save lives in underserved clinics. I'd poured years into it, and now it was my lifeline. I started drafting a business plan for Phoenix Diagnostics, the name I'd chosen to symbolize my rebirth. Every word felt like a brick in a new foundation, one my family couldn't tear down. The shelter wasn't a sanctuary for long. On my third night, I woke to the sound of shattering glass. My eyes snapped open, the bunk creaking as I sat up. Marla was already on her feet, cursing under her breath. "Stay here," she whispered, but I couldn't. I crept to the window, peering through the blinds. Outside, a figure in a black hoodie was spray-painting the shelter's wall, the red letters stark against the brick. "Eliza Kane. You're done." My stomach lurched. They'd found me again. The security guard's shouts echoed from the hallway, followed by the screech of tires. I sank to the floor, my hands over my belly, whispering to my twins, "We're okay, we're okay," but I wasn't sure I believed it. The next morning, I called Camden from a payphone outside a bodega, my voice shaking as I told him about the vandalism. He was there in 20 minutes, his truck idling as he scanned the street. "You can't stay here," he said, his voice low but urgent. "I've got a friend in Somerville, runs a co-working space. It's not much, but it's got security cameras and a couch you can crash on." I hesitated, the weight of depending on him pressing against my pride. But the memory of that red paint, the threat in the text, pushed me forward. I grabbed my bag and climbed into the truck, the diary clutched to my chest like a shield. The co-working space was a converted warehouse, all exposed brick and polished concrete, buzzing with startup founders in hoodies and ambition. Camden's friend, a wiry guy named Jake with a beard that looked like it had its own personality, showed me to a corner desk and a pull-out couch in a back room. "You're good here," he said, handing me a key card. "Cameras catch everything." I nodded, but the knot in my chest didn't loosen. I set up my laptop, diving back into my business plan, but every creak of the floorboards made me jump. I was safe, for now, but I was still running. Days blurred into nights as I worked, refining Phoenix Diagnostics' pitch deck. I poured my heart into every slide, weaving my science with my story, a woman erased by her family, building something undeniable. I wrote about the twins, not as a sob story, but as proof of my strength. Founded by Eliza Kane, Ph.D. in progress. Because surviving betrayal doesn't mean you stop creating. I clicked save, my hands steady for the first time in weeks, but the world outside didn't care about my progress. My phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. "Stop now, or we'll make sure you lose everything." I stared at it, my blood running cold. This wasn't just Ethan and Sophia. This felt bigger, like they'd pulled strings I couldn't see. I showed Camden the text, his face darkening as he read it. "We need to trace this," he said, pulling out his phone. He called a friend who knew tech, someone who could dig into burner numbers. While we waited, he sat with me in the co-working space, his presence a quiet anchor. He didn't try to fix me, didn't offer empty promises. He just stayed, reading a dog-eared sci-fi novel while I worked that night. Over takeout pizza and a playlist of old jazz, he opened up about his family, old money, biotech patents, a life mapped out before he was born. "They wanted me to be someone I wasn't," he said. "I saw you at that pitch event, Eliza. I knew Ethan didn't write that slide deck. I knew it was you." His words hit harder than I expected, a reminder that someone had seen me, even when my family hadn't. But the threats didn't stop. On my way to a women's clinic for a checkup, a car swerved too close, its tires screeching as it nearly clipped me on the crosswalk. I stumbled, my heart pounding, my hands instinctively shielding my belly. The driver didn't stop, but I caught a glimpse of the license plate. Massachusetts, partial number 7KX. I wrote it down, my hands shaking, and texted Camden. He met me at the clinic, his face pale. "This is getting out of hand," he said. "We need to go to the police." But I hesitated. The police meant questions, exposure, maybe even my family finding out where I was. I wasn't ready to face them. Not yet. Instead, I threw myself into Phoenix Diagnostics. I secured a virtual spot at a startup showcase, a chance to pitch to investors across the country. The night before, I practiced in front of a cracked mirror in the co-working space's bathroom, my voice steady despite the nausea that came in waves. I led with data, charts on hormone detection, stats on underserved clinics. But I ended with my truth. I built this not in spite of what I lost, but because of it. Camden sat just outside the frame, his presence a quiet vote of confidence. When my turn came, I faced the grid of faces on the screen, my heart pounding, but my voice clear. The chat pinged with questions, reactions, then a judge's voice cut through. "Kane, as in Sophia Kane, from the Boston Health Gala?" My breath caught, but I didn't flinch. "No," I said, my voice like steel. "I don't have a sister." The silence that followed was electric, the chat exploding with whoa and damn. Camden texted me. Mic drop. I closed the call with a polite nod, my pulse racing but my resolve unshaken. That night, we celebrated with cheap Thai food on the co-working space's rooftop, the Boston skyline shimmering below, but the victory was short-lived. Camden's phone buzzed and his face fell as he read the screen. "My mom," he said, his voice tight. "She knows your aunt. They went to school together. She's been asking about you." My stomach dropped. "You didn't tell me," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked away, guilt in his eyes. "I didn't want to lose you." The betrayal stung, not because he'd lied, but because it reminded me how deep my family's reach went. "No lies," I said, standing. "No ghosts from my past. If we're doing this, it's clean." He nodded, pulling out his phone and deleting every contact tied to his family's world. I watched him do it, each tap a small act of loyalty. The next day, my inbox pinged with a subject line, "Initial funding, Phoenix Diagnostics, $30,000. 0 cents. Not a fortune, but a start." The investor wrote, "Your conviction is unforgettable." I printed the check, folded it into my pocket, and stepped onto the rooftop, the Boston wind sharp against my face. Below, a billboard glowed with Sophia's face, her smile touting a foundation built on my stolen work. I whispered, "You can't erase me just because you screamed louder." But Sophia wasn't done. At a regional medical innovations conference, I walked into a downtown hotel, the kind with marble floors and overpriced lattes, and saw a 10-foot banner, "Women Leading Health," sponsored by the Sophia Kane Foundation. Her face, her name, my thesis. Stolen, repackaged, celebrated. My heart pounded, but I walked past it. My navy blazer zipped over my growing belly. On stage, I presented my data. My slides crisp, my voice unwavering. I ended with a photo of myself, pregnant, a sticky note on my mirror. "You're not invisible." Then I showed the time-stamped email thread, my thesis draft from years before Sophia's foundation existed. The room went silent, the weight of truth heavier than any applause. Camden recorded it all, uploading it with the caption, "The True Founder." The video spread like wildfire, the hashtag trending by the time we reached the parking garage. But waiting at the car was a fresh wound. Red spray paint, backstabber, and an envelope with my name in Sophia's cursive. Inside, a cease and desist letter accusing me of defamation, demanding I take down the post. I pulled out my folder, thick with evidence, screenshots, lab logs, emails, proof that my work was mine. "Let her try," I said, my voice sharp. I brought the fire this time. The lawsuit came fast, a legal storm as fierce as the one that had driven me from my parents' house. I stood in the Phoenix courthouse, my blazer buttoned tight, my mother's old words, too masculine, now a badge of strength. My attorney, Renee, a woman with a fire of her own, presented testimony from a grant officer, confirming Sophia's theft. I handed over audio files, recorded outside my old bedroom, my family plotting to cut me out. The judge, her gaze sharp, granted an injunction barring Sophia from profiting from my work. Sophia stood alone, her parents silent on the other side of the room, her perfect facade crumbling under the weight of truth. Reporters swarmed me outside, their questions a blur. One voice cut through, "What do you say to your family?" I paused, the hush spreading. "I said it in court," I replied, walking away. Back at the lab, my twins, Liam and Lila, slept under blankets, their soft breaths grounding me. My phone buzzed, my father's name, an email with no subject. "Hope you're proud. Sophia's gone. We're alone now. No apology, just a stone thrown into the void." I didn't reply. I pulled on gloves, picked up a pipette, and worked on my protein derivative, a tribute to the mother who never fought her cancer long enough. As dawn broke, I whispered to my twins, "We're okay now, all three of us." The next week, Camden and I planted apple trees in our new backyard, a small plot behind a rented house. Liam and Lila patted dirt around the roots, their laughter a song of survival. A package arrived, no return address, just a photo. Me unedited in my childhood dress, smiling beside my grandmother. Camden had found it in his mother's albums, the original before my family cropped me out. Under the pergola, we sat with lemonade, the silence full of unspoken promises. "Are you okay now?" he asked. I looked at my twins, my hands stained from lab work, and said, "I'm who I was meant to be." They'd tried to erase me, but I'd built something too real to ignore.